A month is a long time to live beside someone who treats you like a draft she never meant to send. Vivian used to sleep with one ankle hooked over mine, like she was claiming territory in her dreams. Now she slept with her back to me, a clean mile of sheet between our bodies, the mattress ridge like a border wall. If I shifted, she shifted farther. If I breathed too loud, she sighed like my lungs were a personal insult. At first, I told myself it was stress, work, family, hormones, Mercury doing whatever Mercury does when people need excuses. Then she stopped kissing me goodbye. Not the dramatic kind of stop, not a fight, not tears, just absence. Like a light bulb burning out so quietly you only notice when you're bumping into furniture. For 4 weeks, I walked around my own house like I was the guest who overstayed. I cooked dinner. I asked about her day. I tried jokes. I tried silence. I tried that careful tone people use around skittish dogs and unexploded bombs. Vivian's responses came in 2 flavors: cold politeness or contempt dressed up as honesty. "You're always on," she told me one night while scrolling her phone with the thumb of a woman who had never lost control of anything in her life. Like trying. It's exhausting. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Trying. As if loving your wife was a hobby you should grow out of. I made coffee in the mornings and watched her drink it like medicine. She stopped wearing her wedding ring at home. Not always. Just enough to make my brain start cataloging patterns, because that's what my brain does when something feels wrong. It turns into a quiet accountant. She started taking calls in the laundry room with the door closed. She started leaving the room when her phone buzzed. She started smiling at her screen with that particular softness people reserve for babies, vacations, and people they're about to disappoint. When I asked, she didn't deny anything. She didn't have to. She just made my questions sound pathetic. "Are you really doing this?" she said, eyebrow lifted. "Interrogating me?" "I'm asking," I said. "That's not an interrogation." "It's the vibe," she replied, and went back to her phone like the conversation was a spam email. The worst part wasn't the rejection itself. Rejection can be loud. You can fight it. You can rage or beg or walk away. This was quieter. This was being erased in real time. I started noticing little things the way you notice them when you're scared and pretending you're not. The way she changed clothes the second she got home, like whatever she wore outside, couldn't touch the furniture. The way she took showers at odd hours, midday on weekends, late at night, after client dinners, like she was washing off a version of herself I wasn't allowed to meet. The way her laugh changed when she was on speakerphone in the car. Lighter, brighter, almost girlish. The laugh she hadn't used with me in months. One Tuesday, I found a dry cleaning receipt in the pocket of a blazer she'd tossed over a chair. It was nothing. Just paper. Just ink. The kind of thing most people throw away without looking. I stared at it while the washing machine filled. The house quiet except for the hum of plumbing. The receipt had a date and a time. Late. Too late for any office that claimed normal hours. The address wasn't near her building downtown. It was near Westbridge Club. Westbridge wasn't a place you went accidentally. Westbridge was where people who said things like, "curate your circle," went to pretend they didn't need anyone. A members-only lounge with dim lighting, doormen who looked through you, and cocktails that cost more than my first car payment. I told myself it could be a pick-up drop-off location. Maybe the cleaner had multiple branches. Maybe she went there because it was convenient. My brain, the quiet accountant, made a note anyway. Then I made another note, and another. Because once you start tracking what's missing, you don't stop. You can't. Your mind becomes a dog with a scent. I didn't install cameras. I didn't hire some trenchcoat private investigator. I didn't hack anything. I didn't need to. Marriage gives you access to the boring truth. The truth in shared calendars, joint accounts, auto-synced devices, and the way someone's story changes depending on which room they're in. Vivian would say, "I'm staying late, quarterly review," and then the shared iPad on the kitchen counter would light up with a hotel loyalty notification at 11:47 p.m. Not explicit, not pornographic. Just a cheerful little banner. "Thank you for your stay." People think betrayal is always dramatic. Lipstick on collars, strange perfume, underwear in glove compartments. Most of the time it's corporate. It's app notifications and quiet lies delivered with a straight face. I tried to talk to her like an adult. "Viv," I said one Sunday while she was applying mascara in the hallway mirror, already dressed for something she called a work brunch. "We're not okay. Can we talk? Like, actually talk?" She didn't turn around. She just kept painting her lashes, eyes focused on her reflection, like she didn't trust me with her face. "Not now," she said. "When, then?" She blinked slowly, then met my eyes in the mirror. The look she gave me wasn't anger. Anger would have meant I still mattered. It was irritation, like I was a stain she couldn't get out of the carpet. "You always want to talk," she said, voice calm, almost bored. "It's not a talk. It's you needing reassurance. And I don't have the bandwidth." I stood there like a man watching a door close in slow motion. "You used to," I said before I could stop myself. "You used to have the bandwidth for me." That earned me a small smile, not a kind one. "People change," she said. "It happens." Then she walked out, perfume trailing behind her like a signature. That night I texted her. "Are you coming home?" She replied 20 minutes later. "Late. Traffic again. Traffic." That was becoming her favorite word. It was a magic spell that turned absence into inevitability. I started sleeping lighter, not because I wanted to catch her, because my body didn't trust the quiet anymore. Every creak of the house sounded like an answer approaching. Around week 3, I noticed she'd started making little comments in front of other people, harmless on the surface, the kind of thing you could laugh at if you weren't paying attention. At my friend Caleb's birthday dinner, when I told a story about a work crisis, Vivian leaned over and said, loud enough for the table, "See, this is what I mean. He gets intense. Intense. Like I was a weather system." Everyone chuckled politely. I did too, because that's what you do when someone is starting to build a narrative around you and you're still pretending it's nothing. On the drive home, I said, "Why did you say that?" She stared out the window at the streetlights sliding by. "Say what?" "That I get intense." I was joking. It didn't feel like a joke. She sighed. "God, Rowan, you analyze everything. That's why you're miserable." There it was again. Not denial, not explanation. A little jab meant to make me feel embarrassed for noticing my own life. I kept my hands on the steering wheel and my voice steady. "I'm not miserable. I'm confused." "You're needy," she said, like she was diagnosing an illness. I laughed once, short and sharp, before I could help it. Needy. Because I want my wife to look at me like I'm a person? She turned her head then, and the look in her eyes made my stomach dip. It wasn't hatred. It was worse. It was superiority. "Don't do this," she said. "Not tonight." And just like that, the conversation was over. She went upstairs first. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the dark window over the sink. My reflection looked like a man older than he was, a man standing in his own house like it belonged to someone else. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Elise, Vivian's sister. Elise and I weren't close. She was the kind of person who saw right through polite nonsense, and Vivian hated that about her. Elise had a dry humor, a sharp mouth, and the bad habit of saying what everyone else only thought. The message said, "Hey, are you okay?" That was it. 6 words. No emojis, no polite filler. I stared at it too long, like it might rearrange itself into something less dangerous. Before I could answer, Vivian appeared at the top of the stairs. She didn't come down. She didn't need to. Her voice drifted through the house like smoke. "Who's texting you?" My heart did that stupid thing where it tries to flee through your ribs. "Elise," I said, keeping it casual. The silence that followed was small but heavy. Then Vivian came down, barefoot, face bare, eyes alert in a way they hadn't been for me in weeks. She crossed the kitchen, held out her hand. "Let me see." "No," I said. And even saying that one word felt like stepping onto thin ice. Her lips tightened. "Why not?" "Because it's my phone." She laughed softly like I'd told a joke. Then she took a step closer and lowered her voice. "You don't need Elise stirring things up," she said. "She doesn't understand us." I didn't like the phrase stirring things up. It implied there was something settled to disturb. It implied there was a pot on the stove, and she didn't want the lid lifted. "I'll answer her," I said. Vivian's gaze flicked down to my hand, to the screen. She moved fast, snatched the phone like she'd done it 1,000 times in her head, tapped, swiped, and my stomach went cold as I watched her thumb hover, then press. Delete. The message vanished. She handed my phone back like nothing had happened, then turned and walked away. No apology, no explanation, just entitlement. I stood there with the phone in my hand, and the house felt different. The air felt thinner. A month of cold rejection was one thing. A spouse who deleted messages from your phone because she didn't want you talking to her sister? That was something else. That was control. That was fear. Over the next few days, I found myself humming at odd times. Not because I was happy, because my mind was trying to keep itself from screaming. A low, stupid tune while I made dinner. A whistle while I folded laundry. Like sound could fill in the empty space where love used to be. Vivian noticed. Of course she did. Vivian noticed everything that wasn't about her and treated it like an insult. It happened on a Thursday. The day had been gray and brittle, the kind of winter day where the sun looks like it's behind frosted glass. I was in the kitchen slicing onions, blinking through the sting, humming without realizing it. Vivian walked in, heels clicking, coat still on, her phone already in her hand like a weapon. She watched me for a second, expression tightening, and then she snapped. "Why do you look so happy?" The question hit the room like a thrown glass. It wasn't curiosity, it was accusation. Happiness, in her mind, was something I wasn't allowed to have without her permission. I set the knife down carefully. The onions blurred in front of me. I turned, wiped my hands on a towel, and let a small smile find my mouth. Not warm, not mean, just controlled. "Thinking about today's date with your sister." For a heartbeat, she didn't react, like her brain couldn't process the sentence. Then her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face in a slow, ugly wave. "You're lying," she said, but her voice wasn't sure. I shrugged, casual. "Am I?" Her phone tightened in her grip. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in a month, Vivian looked at me like I was real again, and that look wasn't love. It was calculation. She took one step closer, lowered her voice until it was almost gentle, and said, "If you do this, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." Then she smiled. Not the smile she used in photos. The other one. The smile that promised a story where I didn't get to be the hero. Elise chose the kind of diner that hadn't updated its decor since the Clinton administration. Vinyl booths cracked like old knuckles, coffee that tasted burned no matter how much cream you poured into it, and a waitress who called everyone Han without irony. It was neutral ground. Elise was good at that. She was already there when I arrived, coat off, sleeves rolled, stirring her coffee like it had personally offended her. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting. I slid into the booth across from her. "Nice to see you too." She studied my face for a long second, eyes sharp, missing nothing. Elise had that gift. Vivian always called it negativity. I called it eyesight. So, Elise said, lowering her voice even though the diner was nearly empty. She deleted my message, didn't she? I didn't bother lying. In front of me. Elise exhaled through her nose, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sigh. Of course she did. You knew? I asked. I suspected, she said. Viv's been busy, careful busy. The kind of busy where she tells different versions of the same story and forgets who she told what. That lined up with my quiet accounting. I watched a drop of coffee slide down the side of my mug. She says I'm intense, needy, unstable. Elise snorted. That's rich. She's been warming that script up for a while. I looked up. Script. Elise met my eyes. Rowan, my sister doesn't leave relationships. She upgrades, and when she upgrades, she makes sure the old model looks defective. There it was, the sentence I didn't want, but needed. Who is he? I asked. Elise didn't answer immediately. She glanced toward the counter, then back at me. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? Define stupid. I mean yelling, or cornering her, or doing something she can point to and say, see, this is what I've been dealing with. I almost smiled. No, I'm trying a new approach, breathing, observing, staying very, very boring. That earned me a small nod of approval. Grant Mercer, Elise said. That's the name that keeps coming up. The name landed with a dull thud. I'd heard it before. Everyone had. Grant Mercer was the kind of man people described with phrases like force of nature and rainmaker. Mid-40s, immaculate suits, permanent tan, voice trained to sound intimate even in a crowd. He chaired boards. He hosted fundraisers. He collected favors like souvenirs. He's married? I asked. Elise shook her head. Divorced, very publicly, very amicably. Of course. She's been spending a lot of time in his orbit, Elise continued. Dinners, events, late strategy sessions. And before you ask, no, she's not being sloppy. She's being selective. Only places where the right people see her. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Not rage. Focus. Why tell me? I asked. Elise's jaw clenched. Because I'm tired of watching her rewrite reality, and because she started using my name as a shield. Emergency contact here. Reference there. Places she doesn't want you asking questions. That explained the message deletion. The waitress arrived, plunked down plates without ceremony, and moved on. The smell of grease and onions filled the booth. I don't want to be a pawn, Elise said quietly, and I don't want to lie for her. I nodded. You won't have to. We ate in silence for a minute. The diner clock ticked too loud on the wall. Tonight, Elise said finally. She told Mom she had a board meeting. Same tone she uses when she's proud of herself. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Where? Elise named it. Westbridge. The quiet accountant in my head closed a ledger. I'm not going to follow her, I said, more to myself than Elise. I'm just going to be in the same neighborhood. Elise gave me a look. Rowan, I know, I said. Public places, public behavior. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Text me when you get home. I might be late, I said. She smiled thinly. Traffic? I left the diner with a strange calm settling into my bones. The kind that comes when fear finally organizes itself into something useful. Westbridge at night looked like a magazine spread pretending to be a building. Warm amber lights, valet stand gleaming, people stepping out of cars like they'd rehearsed it. I parked across the street at a bar I'd been to exactly once, years ago, and took a seat near the window. I ordered a beer I didn't drink. I didn't need binoculars. I didn't need a camera. The sidewalk was well lit. The club's front doors might as well have been a stage. At 9:14 p.m., Vivian appeared. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen before. Simple. Expensive. The kind of dress designed to look effortless while costing someone's rent. Her hair was down, glossy, and she laughed as she spoke to the doorman, touching his arm lightly like she was doing him a favor. She looked alive. Then Grant Mercer stepped into view. He didn't touch her at first. That came later. First, there was proximity, familiarity, the way their shoulders angled toward each other like magnets. They walked out together side by side, and that was the moment my chest tightened. Not because I wanted to rush over and scream, but because of how normal it looked. This wasn't a secret affair. This was a partnership. They stopped near the curb. Grant said something I couldn't hear. Vivian laughed, head tilting back slightly, and reached up to straighten his tie. The gesture was intimate in the way that bypasses explanation, the way you only touch someone when you already know you're allowed to. I felt something cold slide into place behind my eyes. Grant glanced up then, scanning the street with the lazy confidence of a man who assumes the world is friendly. His gaze landed on me. For half a second, nothing happened. Then his mouth curved, not into a smile exactly, but into recognition. He knew who I was. That meant Vivian had talked about me. Grant leaned in, murmured something to Vivian. She turned. Our eyes met across the street, through glass and reflected light. The smile slipped from her face, replaced by something sharp and assessing. Not guilt, not panic, annoyance, like I'd shown up early to something she planned to control. She said something to Grant, then started toward the bar, toward me. I stayed where I was, hands on the table, posture relaxed, the beer untouched. The door opened, letting in a rush of cold air and perfume. Vivian walked in like she owned the place, heels clicking, eyes locked on mine. Her smile returned as she crossed the room, bright, practiced, lethal. She stopped at my table and said, loud enough for the bartender to hear, "Rowan, what are you doing here?" I looked up at her, calm as I'd ever been. "Having a drink," I said. "You?" Her eyes flicked to the empty glass in front of me, then back to my face. Behind her, through the window, I saw Grant Mercer watching us. Vivian's smile tightened. "You need to leave," she said softly. "You're making a scene." I met her gaze and realized with startling clarity that this wasn't about catching her anymore. This was about surviving the story she was already telling. And whatever happened next, she was ready to make me the problem. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand up. I didn't do any of the things she was quietly hoping I'd do so she could file them away as evidence. Instead, I took a slow sip of the beer I hadn't touched until that moment. "I'm not making a scene," I said. "I'm sitting." Vivian leaned closer, her smile never reaching her eyes. "You're embarrassing me." There it was, the same phrase polished and reused, like it had worked before. I tilted my head. "Interesting, because I didn't know this place belonged to you." Her jaw tightened. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. Then she straightened, turned slightly so anyone watching would see a composed woman dealing patiently with an inconvenience. "Let's talk outside," she said. "No," I replied, still calm. "I'm comfortable here." Grant chose that moment to enter the bar. He moved like a man used to rooms rearranging themselves around him. People glanced up, then back to their drinks. He stopped beside Vivian, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair, proprietary without being obvious. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice warm, eyes cold. Vivian laughed softly. "Just a misunderstanding." Grant looked at me like I was a stain he'd noticed on his sleeve. "You must be Rowan," he said. "I've heard a lot about you." I smiled. "That's unfortunate." Grant's lips twitched. "Vivian was just telling me you've been going through a hard time." There it was, the narrative, delivered smoothly, publicly. I nodded. "Funny, she didn't mention the part where she lies about where she is." The air shifted. Vivian's fingers dug into the chair. "Rowan," she said sharply. "Stop!" Grant raised a placating hand. "Hey, no need for this. We're all adults." "Exactly," I said. "Adults don't usually need cover stories." A few heads turned. Nothing dramatic, just attention drifting our way like smoke. Vivian's smile collapsed. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe," I said. "But paranoia usually needs imagination. This just needs a calendar." Grant laughed, light and dismissive. "Look, man, I don't know what's going on between you two, but dragging it into public places isn't healthy." I looked up at him then. Really looked. The expensive watch, the immaculate cuffs, the faint crease between his brows that suggested irritation, not concern. "You're right," I said. "This isn't healthy." Vivian exhaled, relief flickering across her face, until I continued. "So I'll make this easy. I'll leave, and you can go back to whatever story you're telling tonight." Grant nodded, satisfied. Vivian's shoulders relaxed. "But," I added, standing slowly, "don't confuse my silence with ignorance." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Rowan," she hissed, low. "Don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm noticing." I walked past Grant, close enough to smell his cologne, and paused. "By the way," I said quietly, for him alone, "you should be careful. I'm very boring when I'm calm." His smile faltered for half a beat. Outside, the cold hit my face like a slap. I crossed the street without looking back, heart steady, steps even. I didn't go home. I went to my office. The building was mostly dark at that hour, security lights humming softly. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, the glow washing the room in pale blue. I wasn't looking for proof of an affair. That was a rookie mistake. The physical part was irrelevant. I was looking for lies, shared calendars first. Vivian's entries were immaculate, too immaculate. Generic titles repeated too often. Client meeting, strategy review. Always vague, always movable. Then email, not hers, mine. Hotel loyalty notifications, valet confirmations, event reminders I'd been CC'd on months ago and forgotten. Patterns emerged when you stopped demanding answers and started letting data speak. Same hotel, same days of the week, same gaps. I cross-referenced dates with her late nights. They matched. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. No adrenaline, no triumph. Just a quiet, sinking certainty. At 12:37 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Rowan," a woman's voice said, clipped, professional. "This is Janet from HR." My stomach tightened. "We received a call today," she continued. "Someone expressed concern about your recent behavior and mental state. They said you might be experiencing obsessive thoughts related to your marriage." I closed my eyes. "Did they give their name?" I asked. "No," Janet said, "but they seemed genuinely worried. They mentioned surveillance, accusations, emotional volatility." I pictured Vivian's smile in the bar. Perfect. Concerned. "I see," I said evenly. "We'd like you to come in tomorrow," Janet added. "Just to talk." "Of course," I replied. "I'm happy to." When the call ended, the office felt too quiet. Elise's words echoed in my head. She upgrades, and she makes the old model look defective. This wasn't just an affair. This was a controlled demolition, and I was standing in the blast radius. I packed up slowly, deliberately. On the way out, I sent one text, to Elise. "We need to talk. She's moved faster than I thought." The reply came almost immediately. "I know. She called me tonight. Asked what you'd said. Rowan, be careful." I sat in my car for a long moment, engine off, the city humming around me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't confused. I was alert. Because when someone starts telling the world you're unstable, the worst thing you can do is prove them right. And the smartest thing you can do is make sure there are witnesses when the truth finally shows its face. I didn't sleep much after the HR call, not because I was panicking. Panic wastes energy. I was busy replaying conversations, rearranging timelines, watching old moments snap into new shapes now that I knew what lens to use. By morning, the fear had cooled into something harder and more useful. Control. I went to HR exactly on time, sat exactly straight, answered every question like I was narrating the weather, no defensiveness, no accusations, just facts. Yes, my marriage is strained. No, I'm not following my wife. Yes, I noticed inconsistencies. No, I haven't confronted anyone aggressively. Janet watched me carefully, the way people do when they're trying to decide which version of you is real. The unstable one they were warned about, or the calm one sitting in front of them now. When I left her office, she said, "Take care of yourself, Rowan," which was corporate for someone's watching you. Good. I wanted witnesses. That afternoon, I called Mara Voss. Mara wasn't a fixer. Fixers break laws. Mara installed systems, documented processes, and told you what not to do if you wanted to stay clean. She listened without interrupting while I laid it out. The affair, the narrative setup, the HR call, the public embarrassment angle. When I finished, there was a pause. "Okay," she said finally. "First rule, you don't catch them. You let them catch themselves." That's what I was thinking. "Second rule," she continued, "you never surprise people alone. If something happens and no one sees it, it didn't happen the way you say it did." I smiled faintly. I'm starting to see the theme. She exhaled. "Is there a public event coming up?" "Yes," I said. "A donor gala, grants being celebrated." "Perfect," Mara replied. "Public, controlled, documented, not a showdown, a stage." A stage, that word stuck. That evening, Vivian came home late again. She moved through the house like a hotel guest, efficient, detached, already halfway gone. I didn't ask where she'd been. That seemed to bother her more than any accusation. Instead, I made dinner. Normal dinner, pasta, salad, wine she liked. She paused in the doorway, suspicious. "You're cooking?" she asked. "People do that," I said. She sat, watched me like she was waiting for the trap to spring. Halfway through the meal, she said, "I spoke to someone today." "Did you?" I replied, twirling pasta. "Yes," she said. "About you." I looked up. "And?" Her lips curved. "They're worried. You've been acting unpredictably." I nodded slowly. "Interesting, because I've been feeling very predictable." She didn't like that answer. "Rowan," she said, lowering her voice, "I don't want this to get ugly." Neither did I. That's why I was planning. The next day, she tried a different angle. She waited until we were outside, loading groceries, when the neighbor was watering his lawn within earshot. "You're scaring me lately," she said, loud enough to carry. "You watch me like I'm a suspect." I froze for half a second, then relaxed. "No," I said gently. "I watch you like my wife." The neighbor pretended not to listen, pretended too hard. Vivian's eyes flashed. She leaned closer, nails biting into my sleeve. "Stop," she hissed. "You're making yourself look bad." I removed her hand, slow and careful, like diffusing something delicate. "Don't touch me," I said calmly. She stepped back as if startled, eyes widening, voice rising. "I was just trying to help you." The neighbor looked over then. I nodded politely at him. "Morning." Vivian stormed inside. That night, Elise called. "She's nervous," Elise said. "Not panicking, nervous. That's worse." "Did she say anything specific?" "She asked me if you'd been aggressive." I laughed once, humorless. "Of course she did." "Rowan," Elise said quietly. "She's setting the board. Whatever happens next, make sure it's not just the two of you." I promised. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 nights later, I was leaving my office when a black sedan rolled slowly past the exit. Grant Mercer behind the wheel. He stopped just long enough to lower the window. "Rough time, huh?" he said pleasantly. I stayed where I was. Cameras everywhere, streetlights bright. "You should be careful," he added. "People are talking." "So I've heard," I replied. He smiled. "You don't want to make things worse." Then he drove off. That wasn't intimidation. That was testing boundaries, and tests deserved answers. I didn't slash tires. I didn't touch his car. I did something far more effective. The garage he parked in was managed by a private company with strict rules. I knew because Mara checked. Grant's temporary permit had expired the week before. I filed a routine violation notice. No name, no drama. Just paperwork. The next evening, I happened to be there when Grant discovered his car immobilized, a bright yellow boot clamped to the wheel like a public accusation. He swore, loudly. I stepped into view. His expression hardened. "You did this." "I filled out a form," I said. "You broke a rule." "You're playing a dangerous game," he snapped. I stayed a safe distance away. Cameras, witnesses, valet staff watching. "No," I said quietly. "You are. I'm just changing the rules back to the ones everyone else follows." He took a step toward me. I didn't move. "If you touch me," I said, calm as stone, "you'll explain to security why." He stopped. For the first time, I saw something crack behind his eyes. Not fear, calculation failing. Vivian arrived moments later, heels clicking, breath sharp. "What is going on?" she demanded. Grant started talking, fast, defensive. She turned to me, eyes blazing. "Are you attacking him now?" I raised my hands slightly, palms open. "Ask the cameras," I said. Security approached. Questions were asked. Voices lowered. Vivian tried to cry. No one rushed to comfort her. As they dealt with the boot, I leaned toward Grant, just enough for him to hear. "This ends," I said softly, "with everyone seeing exactly who you are." He stared at me, breathing hard. Vivian watched us, something new creeping into her expression. Not anger, concern. Because for the first time, the story she was telling no longer matched the scene unfolding in front of witnesses, and that meant she was losing control. I walked away before either of them could say another word. Behind me, someone laughed. A valet, maybe. Or fate. Either way, the sound followed me all the way to my car, and for the first time since the month of cold rejection began, I slept like a man who knew exactly what he was doing next. I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand like it had something urgent to confess. Unknown number again. This time I didn't answer right away. I let it ring until it stopped, then checked my email instead. 3 messages had arrived overnight. One from Janet in HR, confirming our check-in notes and thanking me for being open and cooperative. One from the garage management company, confirming the violation had been resolved and the incident logged. And one from Vivian. "We need to talk. You crossed a line." I smiled despite myself. That was always the tell. When people said you crossed a line, what they meant was you moved outside the story I prepared for you. I didn't reply. I went to work. I did my job. I was visibly, aggressively normal. That afternoon, Mara called. "They're adjusting," she said. "That boot rattled him more than you think." "Good," I replied. "What about the gala?" "It's locked," she said. "Private briefing room reserved under a neutral pretext. AV support approved. Everything clean. Witnesses? Plenty, and not the kind that owe you anything." That mattered. I didn't want loyalty. I wanted neutrality. Neutral people tell the truth because they don't care enough to lie. Vivian came home early that night. Early for the first time in weeks. She didn't take off her coat. She didn't sit. "We are not doing this," she said, standing in the living room like she was addressing a jury. "Doing what?" I asked, not looking up from the sink. "This campaign," she snapped. The garage stunt. Showing up places. It's obsessive. Funny, I said. That's the same word HR used. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. You went to HR? She asked. They came to me, I replied. Concerned. She laughed, sharp and brittle. Of course they were. I turned then, drying my hands slowly. Vivian, if you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. But don't try to make me the reason your lies fall apart. Her face hardened. You think this ends well for you? She asked. People believe what they see, and right now they see you spiraling. I stepped closer, not threatening, not loud, just present. Careful, I said softly. You've been rehearsing that line too much. She stared at me like she was recalculating a route. That's when she tried something new. She reached into her purse and pulled out my wedding ring. I hadn't even noticed it was missing. I found this, she said, holding it up between two fingers. Under the bed, you dropped it. I knew I hadn't. She took a breath, eyes already shining. I've been trying to protect you, Rowan, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine. There it was, the pivot, the performance. If anyone walked in right now, she'd look like the wounded spouse. I'd look like the man who made her afraid. I held her gaze. Put it back. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Put it back, I repeated. She slid the ring into her purse slowly, smile gone. You're making a mistake, she said. No, I replied. You already did. I'm just not cleaning it up for you anymore. She left without another word. An hour later, Elise called. She's panicking, Elise said. She called Mom, told her you're unstable and unpredictable. And you? I asked. I told her to stop, Elise said, and that if she keeps pushing, I won't cover for her. I closed my eyes. Thank you. She also said something else, Elise added. She said Grant thinks you're dangerous. That one made me laugh, quietly. He should, I said. I'm boring. Boring scares men like him. The night before the gala, Grant tried one last move. I was walking out of a late meeting when he appeared from between two parked cars, hands visible, posture casual. No ambush, no fists, just intimidation dressed as conversation. We need to clear the air, he said. I stopped where the light was good. Cameras on the building entrance, people nearby. I don't, I said. But you can talk. He smiled thinly. You're pushing things. You don't have the leverage you think you do. I don't need leverage, I replied. I have consistency. His smile faded. You know how this ends, right? You lose everything. She moves on. People forget you. I stepped closer, not into his space, but into his certainty. No, I said. You lose the part where you're admired. That hit. He leaned in, voice dropping. If you show up tomorrow, I'll make sure you regret it. I didn't raise my voice. If you touch me, I said evenly, you'll explain it to security, and if you lie, you'll do it on camera. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then he stepped back. That was the moment I knew. Men like Grant don't retreat unless the math stops working. The gala was everything it was supposed to be. Light, music, smiles sharpened by ambition. Vivian arrived on Grant's arm like a statement. She wore red, deliberate, a color chosen to command attention and suggest confidence. She didn't look at me when I entered. Grant did. His jaw tightened. I didn't go to the ballroom first. I went to the private briefing room. Mara was there, calm, efficient, checking sightlines and audio like this was any other event. Once they're in, she said, you let the room do the work. I nodded. When Vivian finally appeared in the doorway, Grant beside her, her smile froze. What is this? She asked. A conversation, I said. With witnesses. She glanced behind her. The board officer, a donor couple, venue security, neutral faces. Grant opened his mouth. I raised a hand, not to silence him, just to slow the moment. "You've been telling a story about me," I said calmly. "Tonight, we compare it to reality." Vivian's eyes flashed. "This is harassment?" "No," I replied. "This is alignment." Mara tapped a screen. Dates, times, receipts, footage timestamps, HR call logs, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Just truth, laid out without emotion. The room grew very quiet. Grant shifted. Vivian's smile cracked. I didn't need to finish. They were already breaking, and just outside that door the gala waited, bright, loud, and unforgiving. I stepped back, letting the silence stretch. Then I opened the door, and walked them straight into it. The ballroom didn't notice us at first. That's the thing about big rooms full of important people. They're loud with confidence, deaf to consequences. Glasses clinked. A string quartet did its job. Laughter rose and fell in practiced waves. Vivian walked beside me like her body had forgotten how to choose a direction. Grant was a half step ahead, jaw tight, shoulders squared, already preparing his smile for the spotlight. I didn't touch either of them. I didn't need to. Grant's name was announced just as we reached the edge of the crowd. Applause rolled toward the stage. Phones lifted. Someone near us whispered his name with admiration. Grant straightened automatically. Muscle memory. Vivian reached for his arm. He hesitated. That hesitation, small, almost invisible, was the first crack anyone else saw. He went up on stage anyway. Of course he did. Men like Grant always assume momentum will save them, that if they keep moving forward, the ground won't give way. The board officer began the introduction. Words like leadership, integrity, vision floated through the room like expensive perfume. Vivian stood just off stage, smiling for the crowd, eyes scanning for me. She found me. For a split second, I saw real fear. Then it was gone, replaced by resolve. She moved. Not toward me, toward the microphone stand placed discreetly near the stage stairs, the one meant for brief remarks, thank yous, controlled moments. Security stepped in before she reached it. "Ma'am," one of them said quietly. "What?" she snapped. "I'm his wife." The word hung there, awkward and inaccurate. The board officer paused mid-sentence. He glanced to the side. Someone leaned in and whispered to him. His expression changed, not shock, but recalibration. That was the second crack. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officer said, clearing his throat, "we're going to take a brief pause." The applause faltered. Murmurs rippled. Grant turned, confused now. "What's going on?" No one answered him. The donor couple from the briefing room had moved closer. So had two other board members. Phones were already out, not recording yet, but ready. Vivian looked at me then, really looked. "You did this," she mouthed. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I just stood there, hands loose at my sides, the calmest man in the room. The board officer stepped back up to the microphone. "There are concerns," he said carefully, "that require immediate review. Out of respect for everyone involved, tonight's recognition will be postponed." A gasp. Quiet, but sharp. Grant's face went pale. "This is ridiculous," he said, a little too loudly. "You can't do this without what? Without the story holding?" Vivian surged forward. "This is a misunderstanding. My husband—" Security blocked her again. "Husband?" someone behind us whispered. Grant stared at her. "What did you say?" She turned to him, eyes blazing. "I said my husband." The word hit him harder than anything I'd done. The crowd wasn't applauding anymore. They were watching. That's the difference between admiration and interest. Admiration is passive. Interest is hungry. Grant stepped down from the stage, anger bleeding through the polish. "This ends now," he snapped at me, voice tight. "You don't get to ruin my life because your marriage failed." I leaned in just enough for him to hear. "You ruined it the moment you needed secrecy to feel powerful." He clenched his fists. Security shifted closer. Vivian tried again, voice breaking just enough to sound real. Rowan, please. You're humiliating us. Us. I looked at her then, at the woman who had spent a month making me feel invisible, unstable, small. This isn't humiliation, I said quietly. This is accuracy. The words carried farther than I intended. Someone laughed. Not cruelly. Uncomfortably. Grant backed away, eyes darting, calculating exits that no longer mattered. His phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. The world responding faster than he could manage. Vivian stood frozen, red dress suddenly too loud, too bright, like a warning sign everyone finally noticed. She reached into her purse again. This time, I knew what she was holding. The ring. She didn't pull it out. She didn't need to. I could see the idea forming, tears, vows, the injured wife narrative. I beat her to it. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my own ring, and held it up between two fingers. The metal caught the light. I'm done, I said. No drama, no speech, just truth. Her face collapsed, not into sadness, into nothing. Grant turned and pushed through the crowd. Security followed. Conversations erupted behind him like fires catching. Vivian stayed where she was, alone now, the center of a circle that no longer wanted her. I slipped the ring back into my pocket. I didn't stay to watch her fall any further. I walked out of the ballroom, past the string quartet still pretending nothing had changed, past the lobby where whispers were already sharpening into certainty. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. Behind me, the doors closed. And for the first time in a month, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt finished.